Disclaimer: No Self-Hate is a mental health awareness platform, not a licensed therapy provider or certified psychological organization. All content is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice or a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are in crisis or need immediate support, please contact a licensed mental health provider or text 988 for the Crisis Lifeline, US only. Some topics may include sensitive mental health themes. Viewer discretion is advised. This channel may include brief use of copyrighted material under Fair Use, U.S. Copyright Law, Section 107, for commentary, education, and discussion.
Hello, and welcome to No Self-Hate, Season 1, Episode 5, Part 1 of 5, What is Right versus Wrong? I'm your host, Kevin, and today we're going to dive into one of the most important and timeless questions every human must face. What is right and what is wrong? In this episode, we'll explore, how our morals and ethics shape our understanding of right and wrong. We'll also take a look at the different types of right and wrong, and we'll go and examine key factors that influence our understanding of right and wrong. Okay? So this is some wonderful information. I have really been working on this information really hard for us. We're going to seize this opportunity to elevate ourselves and get some information into our brains. Again, this is just an opportunity for growth. For those that feel self-empowered, that feel that the journey is yours for the taking and you can put in the work and you can make things better for yourself, we have one for the ages. This right and wrong stuff is going to be amazing. I've already applied and I'm still working on it, and I hope you all are as well, working on your self-hatred, your trauma, your anger, and your forgiveness. Now we're going to take a deeper look and open our lenses up to see right and wrong, right? Because it's so subjective. Everybody was raised differently. There are different educational levels in life for every human. Your household may have had doctors in it. This person's household may have only had 8th graders in it, people that only had 8th grade educations. In all of this mix, how do we coexist together? How do we define a universal right or wrong? Right? That is the question. But before we answer that question, we are going to take a deep dive into right and wrong and see the different layers so that we can gain the knowledge necessary to have the perspective to start determining right versus wrong in a more similar, consistent effort from each human, where we are all understanding that, killing is wrong. We are all understanding that stealing is wrong. And why? For what reasons? Why is it wrong? If someone doesn't know, is it okay if they don't know? Is ignorance an excuse? And see, these are some of the things that come up when we think about right versus wrong. But today, we are going to synchronize our compasses, and we are going to have similar beliefs of what right and wrong is, or we have the opportunity to have similar beliefs about what right and wrong is. Okay, so with that being said, I don't want to eat up too much more time. Real quick, I want to thank all of my supporters. You all are wonderful. We're approaching 500 subscribers. That's 500 different people that we've now had the opportunity to reach or have reached, and they like our content. They like what we're doing. They see our self-empowerment journey, and they are joining us. So I want to thank you all for that. We are accelerating the evolution of human emotional intelligence together, and we're starting with ourselves. So I want to thank you all for that. And yeah, let's just dive right into today's episode. All right, everyone, let's get ready to get started. So before we get started, everyone, let's breathe, let's relax. Everything is good. I hope you've been fine. I hope you have been well. I hope you have been resolving your issues, your trauma. I hope you've been working on your anger. I hope you're in a peaceful place right now as we prepare to absorb this next level of information. Again, this is just an opportunity for growth. And there's an opportunity to seize it. So we can do that together here in a second, but I just want you accountable. I don't want you defensive. I just want you to have some objectivity. I want you to be neutral. All right. So let's dive into it. All right. So, what is right versus wrong? Now, before we dive into that, let's think about that ourselves first. Let's think what it means to us, right versus wrong. When you were taught right versus wrong, who taught it to you? Do you think that person had a good grasp on right versus wrong? Where do you think, those people got their understanding of right versus wrong? Were there commonalities? I want you to think about that and ask yourself, do I think I was taught right and just as much effort as I was taught wrong? Like, I want you to think about that. What are the origins of that information for you? For me, it was my mother coming up. We went to church a lot. She's always been a religious person. My father as well. He was always in church every Sunday, so we had a moral guide to follow. We had a set of principles that we could follow, and that's where I began to learn some of my morals. Right, that's where my morals were designed. All right, what about you? What is that like for you? All right, so let's define right versus wrong. So, right versus wrong refers to the moral or ethical judgment about behaviors, decisions, or actions. It revolves around understanding, differentiating, and choosing between actions that are considered ethically or morally correct, which is right, and those deemed unethical or morally incorrect. So it's basically our, how we live life, the decisions that we make. When we're in arguments, the positions that we take, that we think we have the right of way, or we think we are right. Everyone thinks they're right. Right? I try not to think that as much, but I do sometimes. And the reason I try not to think it as much is because I don't have all of the knowledge in the world to know 100% all of the time that I am right whenever I feel something. And sometimes when we feel something and we feel it strongly, we think it's right. And it can be an error. It can be a misaligned intent or intention of ours, where we think we're right and we think we're standing on the side of good, but in actuality we're not. We could be wrong. What do we do in those situations? How often do you defend being right? How often are you wrong? There are some of us that have never been wrong, ever. Right? Every argument we have to win. Every argument we have to have the last word. Why do we want to be right so bad? And what is this subjective right that we feel? At its essence, right refers to actions that promote safety, truth, justice, compassion, growth, and collective well-being. So right is what affects the whole, holistically. What is the greater good? What applies to everyone is what we look to as right. So if we look at the news, you have people on there, unaliving each other, all types of stuff. In those people and in those criminals, do you think that they feel a sense of right? Do you think that they feel a collective well-being, compassion, growth, safe, justice? Do you think they feel that way? I don't think so. Here's something. What if they were never taught morals? What if they've never had the conversation of right versus wrong? What if they just move through life living and doing whatever they want and whatever they feel? They didn't have grandparents or parents that took them to church. They didn't, join any organizations. They haven't read many books. They haven't, gained too much knowledge on right, but they're alive and they're adults and they have weapons and they have different things that, they feel free will to be able to move with. What do we do in those situations as a society where we have the people that don't understand right or wrong? They were never taught it in their entire life. Well, today, we're going to try to end that. We're going to make sure that we can put a resource out for everyone that if they ever find themselves, confused about right or wrong, No Self Hate is somewhere you can go and capitalize on an opportunity to understand what right or wrong is. Because at the end of the day, right or wrong is subjective. Okay, and we'll get into that a little later, but just wanted to put that out here. All right, now, wrong refers to actions that cause harm, violate trust, destroy integrity, or undermine life, dignity, or community. So think about the news. Now, we're talking about everything on the news. We're not just talking about what's sensationalized, what's the most popular, or what's the low-hanging fruit. We're talking about all of the news. If you watch the news, what I see sometimes is a bunch of people that do not understand what right or wrong is. Or if they do, they think they can beat the system. They think that they can get past being wrong and skate away. Some people justify it as a way of life. Oh, well, I have to live this way because I don't have the resources to do it any other way. And I'm blocked from getting the resources to do it because of my past and my criminal past and all of that, right? Is that still a legitimate justification for wrong? Right? There should be some universal rights and wrongs, which there are, but not everyone knows them. Right. So, how long has right versus wrong existed? So now let's go into the past, because this question didn't just come up in our lifetimes. These questions have been around for ages, right? So let's look into some of the history of which I like to look at it as humanity becoming more and more emotionally intelligent over time. What makes sense for the whole? Coming to that question, right? So it all started from the beginning. People asked, what's the right thing to do? In early tribes, survival meant working together. People learned not to steal, not to hurt others, and to protect each other. So think about that. People learn not to steal. So that means that in the beginning of society, people were instinctively having reactions to someone stealing something from them. And that feeling was not great. Even if they didn't have any information to teach them that stealing is wrong, naturally and biologically, there was impulses or different feelings that they felt that when someone stole from me, it just felt wrong. And maybe they didn't have a word for wrong at the time, but they knew they felt something, right? So they had to work together to say, okay, well, these types of things can't be allowed, because if they are, people may feel bad, people may harm other people. These things we deem as wrong. They are not favorable to the whole. All right. These became the first ideas of right and wrong. So way back then, just being in a group, a village, or just a group of people, naturally wrong was able to be identified. They were able to identify the wrongs, the things that didn't feel great, the things that maybe people shouldn't do, right? And maybe that went as far as unaliving, maybe that went as far as other things as well. But they developed that naturally over time. So the sense of right and wrong has been with us since the beginning. Now, the next step was religion shaped morality. So there's another opportunity to help find morals is through religion. As religion spread, people started following moral rules based on faith. In Christianity, do not lie, do not steal, and in Buddhism, avoid harming others. These rules taught people how to live and treat others. So think about it now. If someone has not, maybe it was a kid that never went to church, and maybe it was a kid whose parents weren't around like that, and that kid grew up without the moral teachings from his parents, and he or she didn't go to church as well. So are you starting to get the picture of how some of our youth and some people get lost in this whole right versus wrong journey, where some people have been handicapped where they haven't even received the lesson or the knowledge on what is right, and they just go through life feeling what they feel. But religion is another way to align yourself with some moral codes. As you please, obviously, that is, you do whatever you want with your life. I just think, in my personal opinion, if if I was born on earth without any information and I had to be around a group of people, having some text or some guidelines or rules or information to help me along that journey would be a form of self-preservation, in my opinion, because I would have the guidelines that I could follow. And we talk about mimetic desires, how they're designed and different things like that. But even whatever your beliefs are, or whatever my beliefs are, whether I do believe in, a higher power or not, it is my belief that any human being born on earth with a set of guidelines and some information about what it is to be human, something they've never been before, I think it's, not necessarily a bad thing. I think it is, again, an opportunity for knowledge or an opportunity for growth. All right, so philosophy asks deeper questions. Later, philosophers ask, what makes something good or bad? Should we follow rules or do what feels right? Now think about that one. Now that one's, should we follow rules or do what we think feels right? So if I go to a stop sign and I don't want to stop all the way and no one's around, I'm the only person there, should I follow the rules or should I do what I think feels right or what feels good in that moment? That is the question. But I think the things that we do behind closed doors or when no one is watching is the real measure of the person that we choose to be or the people that we choose to be. Because it creates that integrity that no matter who's watching, I'm going to continue to support my morals and support my beliefs. I am going to continue to follow the guidelines that I was taught, not to beat the system, not to always want to win. These were the different things that I was taught. So should we follow rules or do what feels right? And see, philosophers thought about this a long time ago. People like Socrates, Confucius, believed we could think and reflect to understand right and wrong, not just follow orders. So not just following a text. Now, the philosophers started to believe that we could be taught morals and that we could begin to understand what right and wrong is over time. That's how the philosophers felt. They brought that information in, right? And again, all of this to me is emotional intelligence. Watching us as a race move through the levels and layers of emotional intelligence and the evolution of our emotional intelligence. All right, the age of reason changed everything. During the Enlightenment, 1600s and 1800s, thinkers argued that humans could use reason to figure out what's right. They introduced new ideas like freedom, equality, human rights, doing what benefits the most people, right? The greater good, that could be considered the greater good. This era shifted morality from blind obedience to thoughtful responsibility, right? I play basketball all the time. And I remember playing for a league. And I remember before I played for the league, I couldn't wait to go to the gym and play basketball, right? But when it started, when I started playing in the league, we had to be there at 7 every day for practice, and we had to dedicate this block of time to get better and work as a team and so on and so forth. And it became more of an obligation for basketball. It kind of took away the fun for me, right? Because at that point I felt I had to do it. So that's similar to what's being said here. This era shifted morality from, feeling like you had to do something, blind obedience, just do as you're told, right? To thoughtful responsibility. So now we're stepping into that intellectual realm where we're starting to understand that, wait, okay, now I understand why the laws say do this. I understand why I should, exercise responsibility to being a better person or being right, having morals. So that was the age of reason. And now we go into modern life and morality. Today, our understanding of right and wrong comes from many sources: family and culture, religion and spirituality, education and personal experiences, laws and human rights, social media, and public opinion. These influences often overlap or even clash. Which is why people still struggle with moral decisions every day. So you have all of this stuff coming into play. You have family and culture, the things that your family taught you and the things that your culture practices. You have religion and spirituality in those things. Hopefully they align with what family and culture is, but not all of the time they do. Then you have education and personal experiences, laws and human rights, and then social media and public opinion, all in your ear at once. All of it. It's just constantly in your ear, overstepping, this or that. It's all playing there. So nowadays, more than ever, we have to have a greater sense of right and wrong. And we have to get that, we have to educate ourselves to make sure that we're staying ahead of that opportunity to know what right and wrong is. Why it still matters. Even in modern times, we constantly face questions like, should I stay silent or speak out? Is it wrong to share something online if it causes harm? Do I stand up for what's right even if it costs me something? Technology, politics, injustice, and everyday life all make the question of right versus wrong more important than ever. And I recently experienced something similar to this, where I was put into a position to recognize right versus wrong. Regardless of what was done to me, I had to pull through and find a way to still do the right thing, even though I knew that my pride was losing, my ego was losing, that this situation, I could have brought, everything I had, the kitchen sink, to try to win this situation. And I probably could have done it if I had worked hard for it, right? But it's just something in me that just said that wasn't the right thing to do. Okay? Where I believe I stood up for what I thought was right. An action happened after that, and I had an opportunity to respond any way that I wanted to. I chose to do nothing because I could not find anything that I thought of that would be beneficial, that would be the greater good for the whole. The only things that were coming to mind were selfish things that would only benefit me. So I chose to not do anything. I chose to forgive, unconditional forgiveness, and I chose to move on, right? So that's what this kind of means when we think about right and wrong in different life situations. And it could happen anywhere. It could happen when you're getting on the train. It could happen when you wake up with your spouse in the morning. It can happen, you can be put on the stage of having to choose right versus wrong at any moment in your life. And what roadmap are you using to make these decisions every time? Do you have a process that you go through when you find yourself in situations that you don't know necessarily whether you're right or wrong, but everyone wants to be right and everyone fights very hard? Next time you have a conversation or a tough conversation with someone, notice how hard they're fighting to be right. Why do we do that? Why do we want to be right so bad? As much knowledge as that we don't know. Why do we feel that we have enough knowledge to present perspectives that make us feel like it is the absolute perspective or it is the absolute right thing? What is that? What causes that within us? All right, so final thought on this. Right versus wrong has been part of the human story since the beginning. It has evolved from survival instincts to religious teachings to modern ethical debates. But the core question remains the same. What kind of person do I want to be, and how do my choices affect others? This question still matters because how we answer it shapes our lives, our communities, and our futures. What kind of person do you want to be, and how do your choices affect those around you? Are you making choices that benefit the whole, or are you making choices that mostly benefit you? And if you are doing that, why do you feel the need to make everything or all of your choices be in your favor? That seems like that would get boring after a while if you just were right all of the time. Like, it just seems like there's no challenge in that, right? Let's keep moving. All right, we got a little ways to go, so I got to speed it up. So now, before we go deeper into what is right versus wrong, they talked about, in right versus wrong, they talked about morals and ethics. Okay? Before we go further, I want to define that piece, morals and ethics. What is a moral, or what are morals, and what are ethics? All right, so the definition of moral refers to personal beliefs or values about what is right and wrong. These are often shaped by upbringing, religion, culture, or personal experience. So let's look at that again. Let's go back to our example we had earlier where there's a human being that has not, had the proper upbringing. They don't know much about religion. They don't know much about their culture or the practices of their culture, the traditions. And then they don't have much personal experience. They don't go out much. They haven't seen much. In that example, how do you think they are finding morality? And do they ever find morality? Or do they go out here, live their lives, and do whatever they want until they find themselves either in prison or worse? Like, what do we do for that portion of our population that just didn't have the tools to identify right versus wrong, that were never taught? They may have had the opportunities, but again, if you don't know something, you don't know something. I was telling someone that a few weeks ago that, sometimes we don't know what we need. And because if you don't know something, you just don't know. There's no way for you to know. If I don't proactively go out, and let's say I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, if I don't go out and get a degree and go learn the discipline to get that degree, how do I know how to be a neurosurgeon? And then on top of that, If I've never heard of a neurosurgeon, how do I even know a neurosurgeon exists? How do I find myself saying, hey, one day, hey, man, I want to be a neurosurgeon, but I've never heard of it. No one's ever introduced the knowledge to me. I've never seen it anywhere. This is something that is completely in full view of my ignorance, and I just don't know anything about it. The same thing with right and wrong or with morals. If people don't know that they exist, how do we ever expect them to find their way? Okay, so key traits. Internal morals comes from within a person. Emotional, often tied to feelings of guilt, shame, or pride. So that's emotional morals. Cultural morals, shaped by family, community, or faith. I talked about how my mother, my family, my community, and my faith help shape my morality. Subjective, can differ from person to person. That is very important. The subjectivity of this conversation that we are having, or this information that we are going over, the subjectivity is beyond scale. It is, because how can we determine what is right or wrong for someone in any situation? Now, there are universal rights. Again, most religions cover those rights. Whether it's the Ten Commandments, whether it's, different laws within, different other religions and, things like that. But most people have different beliefs, and we just can't always assume that the knowledge that we've learned should apply to everyone. So that's why this topic is so broad. And that's why we're trying to synchronize our clocks and, if not agree on the same thing as right or rights or wrong, but at least say that we saw the same information about it. And we had the opportunity to run that information through our mind and see what that information does for us. All right. So, examples of morals. Telling the truth when it's hard, helping the poor because you believe it's right, feeling that stealing is always wrong no matter the reason. So these are morals. Telling the truth even when it's hard. This is the number one thing that I see that is almost an involuntary reaction that people struggle with across the board, from children to adults. Telling the truth even when it's hard. Being truthful. Because it makes you vulnerable when you have to tell the truth, especially if it's a truth that can hurt someone or something that put you at fault. No one wants to feel that, right? So people lie. Helping the poor because you believe it's right. If that's what you do, that's what you do. You volunteer. That's a moral that you have. Not everyone shares that, but a lot of people do. Feeling that stealing is always wrong no matter the reason, and that is real. If someone has ever stolen something from you, you know that feeling. Like, yikes. It's like, it's real. Okay? So we all can relate to that. So that is the definition of moral. So now let's look at the definition of ethics. So ethics are systemic rules or principles that define what is right and wrong in a specific group or profession. Ethics are often written into codes of conduct. So most people who have jobs, their job has a code of conduct or a code of ethics, a certain way that they want you to present yourself as an employee, as you represent that organization. Key traits: external, set by a group or institution; rational, based on logic and consistency, often taught in schools or workplaces; objective in theory, intended to apply equally to everyone within a group. So ethics is more like a set of laws or rules or codes. I don't want to say best practices, but codes and different things like that you can follow, or that are set out for everyone to adhere to for a certain purpose. Okay. Examples of ethics: a journalist should never fabricate a story. That is very true. A doctor must keep patient information confidential. You violate HIPAA laws, you could get fines and all types of stuff. So yes, that is a very good ethic. I could see the appropriation for ethics in our society, as we have different positions of power, that we must conduct ourselves with a certain level of morality and ethical behavior. A business must not engage in insider trading. Again, ethics. Setting that bar there. People still do it, but it exists there. And normally, if you find yourself following these things, you keep your job, you stay out of trouble, you don't, create negativity or negative energy for yourself. So ethics is very important. And we know that now morals are things that are basically our values, the things, personal things that we've learned. And ethics is normally set by an external group or institution. One is our morals are from within. Our ethics may come from an institution or group outside of us. All right, so why do we struggle with morality and ethics? Why do you think human beings struggle with morality and ethics? It could be too many influences. People are surrounded by conflicting messages from family, culture, religion, social media, laws, friends. What's right in one group may be wrong in another, causing confusion and inner conflict. Moral gray areas. Modern issues are complex. Unlike the past, where rules were more black and white, today we face situations with no clear answer. Examples: should I report a coworker who's stealing if it might cost them their job and they got a bunch of kids? Should I report them and they have a bunch of kids, and I know that if I report them they will be fired, and that would then affect their children? What do I do in this situation? Do I keep my mouth closed and allow that situation to work out whatever way it works out, or do I go interfere because it's the right thing to do? So these are the moral gray areas that we speak of. Next up, social media and popular culture. Online culture often rewards what's viral or popular, not what's right. Lies, hate, or bad behavior can go viral, making people question if being moral is worth it. If you can get more clicks for being immoral or having the image of an immoral person, I guess self-preservation would make some people do that. I guess a lack of options for financial security could make people do those types of things. I personally don't agree with it, but again, entertainment is entertainment to some people. I watch No Self-Hate. I try to watch things that help my mind. I listen to music that helps me. I try to do these things, but every now and then I may run across something that may be a little self-hatey. We'll create that word. We'll create it. A little self-hatey, right? Some music, or I may, watch a video on YouTube. I see all types of stuff, right? And in doing that, it helped me understand the need for no self-hate. The need of being able to go somewhere where everything there is not trying to poison you or mislead you or shape your mimetic desires or pull you down or lead you astray. Here at No Self-Hate, we're working on ourselves. It's about you. It's about me. It's about us. It's about we. And we are going to use as much of our time as we can to ensure that we are giving some time to ourselves, giving some love to ourselves, because what's the alternative? Going on the internet, hearing about someone else's life, how some celebrity who calls his supporters fans, fanatics, just bought a new house and all of his fans who are not above the poverty line, or some of his fans that may not be above the poverty line, are cheering for him and being happy for him, wishing that they had it. Now there's an opportunity for them to be inspired there, to want to have some things that they see other people have. But most of the times it's people looking, feeling like they will never achieve these things. Right? And people are being misled. All right, so I'm gonna move on from that. That could go on forever. All right, self-interest over community. So modern life often teaches people to focus on success, money, or status over helping others. This can make it harder to choose what's ethical when it conflicts with personal gain. So there are a few examples that come to mind there. I'll try not to get too specific, but personal gain over ethical behavior. We've seen that in insider trading. We've seen that in water crises. We see that a lot throughout society and throughout our culture, and the different cultures that, you know, some people just take the money and, you know, it's worth more to them than being ethical. You know, some people may receive a large amount of money to be entertainers, and their message that they're using for entertainment may be destructive to a certain group of people or to any human, right? And they know that it's destructive. They know what they're talking about doesn't really benefit, you know, the people that are listening to it, but they still do it and they get a check. And they're happy with their check, and they don't mind the after effects of what listening to self-destructive information can do to you or to a human being. All right? So that's self-interest over community. Next up, loss of trust in authority. Many people no longer trust religious leaders, governments, or institutions to tell them what's right. With no clear moral guide, people feel lost or make decisions based only on what benefits them. Right? So you see how that trust has eroded when we have people that may be in positions of power, and our leaders may misuse their positions, or, you know, on the other side of that, you know, again, these are just human beings, and we know that humans are not perfect, and we know that humans make mistakes. Nevertheless, they step into these positions and they end up showing us that they're human and that they make mistakes. But even though that may happen and we may forgive them, there's a boundary set there. That boundary can be trust. That, you know what, I forgive you, but I can no longer trust you the way that I thought I could. And I'm not willing to be vulnerable in this moment to you in the possibility that you will let me down or harm our trust again. Right? So that happens at all levels. Government, religion, institutions. So that can happen anywhere. Next up, emotional wounds and trauma. So people who've been hurt, abandoned, or mistreated may struggle to care about right and wrong. Pain can harden hearts. Okay. Oh, I done lost it. Sorry, y'all. Bear with me. All right. Again, I'm anti-perfectionism. Sometimes I think I do stuff like that on purpose just to let you all know that I'm human and not a robot. Right? All right. So let's go back. So emotional wounds and trauma. People who've been hurt, abandoned, or mistreated may struggle to care about right and wrong. Pain can harden hearts, and trauma can block empathy, making ethical choices more difficult. When people become hardened by pain, when people become hardened by a lack of love, there is something that I am discovering, or that I have discovered, or I think I'm discovering, that there is a issue in our society with love deprivation. I'm starting to notice that there are people that do not have the adequate amounts of love that I think any human should have, right? And they operate in these love deprived states, and it makes them angry, it makes them hateful, it makes them bitter, vindictive, all of these things, because there is a lack of love, whether that be a lack of love for self or a lack of love coming from outside of them. You know, we have people, and I know a few people that just don't have many people. They're, you may be able to come home and walk in your house and get hugs from your children, and it's genuine, pure love. You know that it's real, pure love, where there may be people that don't have people in their lives that can show them genuine, pure love, and they end up, getting bitter about it and just turning into sour grapes perpetually. These are real things. All right. Next up, fear of judgment and rejection. People may know what's right, but stay silent or go along with wrong behavior because they're afraid of being judged, canceled, or rejected. I just went through this not too long ago, and I was in a situation where people saw something wrong happening to me. And again, this isn't this is anti-victimhood. This is not for manipulative purposes. This is factual information, just to extract some knowledge from my experience. So people just watched, people that, I thought had a sense of morality, just watched it happen and didn't say anything. And I couldn't blame them, because in their minds, self-preservation is over the truth. Self-preservation is over being righteous or being right or having integrity, right? So in that situation, I forgave them all, and I understand that they're just trying to survive, and they had to turn an eye to something that they witnessed that was obviously wrong, and just move on with their lives. It didn't happen to them, so oh well, so be it, right? But prior to that, these people presented themselves as moral people. These people presented themselves as upright humans or upright people. And, when that moment came, I experienced the truth. And the truth was, people are just trying to survive, man. And they will put survival over the truth, over doing the right thing, over speaking up when they should speak up. And it's a sad thing. It's something that, we need to work on in our culture, but it is a very sad thing. All right. Overload of information. The internet gives people too much to process. With so many views and opinions, people can feel overwhelmed, unsure who or what to believe. Yet, too much information can be harmful. Too much information can be harmful because it creates stages for you to question what you believed previously. When you learn something new, sometimes it renders other things you've learned to be obsolete. But you can get into this thing where everything that you're learning is making what you've learned obsolete, and now you don't know what to believe. You've lost your moral compass because this new information has taught you this, and there are ways that, too much information is not good. All right, next up is moral fatigue. So seeing constant injustice, racism, poverty, war can make people feel hopeless or numb. They may stop caring or believe that doing the right thing won't matter. I believe that is real moral fatigue, where you get tired of turning the other cheek, and you get tired of, being abused or whatever. In those situations, when I was in those situations, righteousness and being moral is, in my opinion, a superpower in nature. When it's like when you're being right and you're doing righteous things and you're doing moral things, it's like your heart feels lighter. It's like your heart feels freer than it normally would. when you're doing these moral things and you're operating in this moral space. That can open up other opportunities for you. When no matter what, you stick to the right thing and you stay focused on the right thing. You stay focused on your morals. You stay focused on the things that you were taught. And in all of my experiences, whenever I did that, something good happened to me. Something good happened for me. So I think I found a frequency that I can't prove. Is theory. This is my theory. That doing good does something to you, so good things happen outside of you. It's weird. Let me work on that and get back to you on that, where maybe I could come up with some evidence of that. But just from my experience, that's what it's been. So try not to get morally fatigued. Try to stay strong. Lack of reflection. Fast paced living leaves little time for people to slow down, think, and ask, is this the right thing to do? Without reflection, people act on impulses, pressure, or emotion, not values. Okay? So you must reflect, self reflect. Always find time to look at yourself or try to picture yourself in, what you're doing. For me, when I find myself in tough situations, in my mind, I'll try to act like I'm standing in the corner looking at this situation happen, and I'm looking at my performance, and I'm looking if I'm proud of that performance, right? So I have to reflect and see what's happening, even in real time. All right, final thought. Modern humans don't struggle with morality because they're bad. They struggle because the world is noisy, complicated, and often painful. That's why it's so important to reconnect with empathy, self-awareness, and courage to choose what's right, even when it's hard. All right, so what are the benefits of moral and ethical behavior? So, the benefits of moral and ethical behavior is positive influence on others. Your example teaches others, especially children or peers, how to live with integrity. Ethical behavior spreads. One good choice can inspire many more. People are watching. You are designing the mimetic desires of children that have never learned different subjects or different things. So when you exercise morality and ethical behavior, it could be the first time that someone's learning that, and that could be something that they can carry with them forward for the rest of their lives. It's a lot of reasons. All right. Inner peace and self-respect. So when you act in line with your values, you avoid guilt, regret, and self-hate. No self-hate. You sleep better at night knowing you did the right thing, even when no one was watching. Stronger relationships. Trust is built on honesty, respect, and fairness. Moral and ethical behavior strengthens bonds with friends, family, co-workers, and communities. Stronger relationship. When I can count on you to be a good person, I want to be around you more. I want to depend on you. I want to experience that return on my investment when you are moral, you have a sense of morality, even not just outside of self, even with yourself, even you notice when you do things wrong in whether or not it's right or wrong, and you're able to check that. I really love that in my relationships. And again, this is how you have relationships that last your entire life. I have friends that have been friends since the 4th grade, and they're still friends today, because there had to be some type of moral and ethical code there for them to continue on their relationship all of these years, thus strengthening your relationships. An example of strengthening your relationship is keeping your promises, listening with empathy, and being loyal makes others feel safe around you. All right, next up, a better reputation. People who act ethically are seen as trustworthy and dependable. This can open doors in your personal life, your career, and your community. For example, an honest leader earns respect, while a dishonest leader loses followers fast. All right, so you got to stand on your word. You have to practice what you preach, and that is a real thing that was just said to me the other day. right? Without the expectation of perfection, but with the expectation of excellence and effort. Okay. Next up, long-term success. Doing what's right, even when it's not easy, builds a solid foundation for real lasting success. Shortcuts and shady behavior may work for a while, but they often lead to failure or consequences later. Don't cut no corners. Don't you cut no corners. You put the work in and you get that long-term success. So, for example, businesses that treat people fairly tend to last longer and attract loyal customers. That is real. People just want to be treated right. People want the effort that they put into you, if not matched, somewhat similar to, you giving that back to them. All right. Next up, social stability and justice. So when society values fairness, honesty, and accountability, it becomes safer, more peaceful, and more equal. An example is laws based on human rights protect people from discrimination and abuse. Next up, mental and emotional health. This is the one. Living with integrity supports emotional wellness. It reduces anxiety, strengthens identity, and increases confidence. An example is knowing you stood up for someone even when it was uncomfortable boosts your self-worth, right? So having that mental and emotional health, morals are very important for that. It reduces anxiety. When you don't have bad things to think about, you normally don't have, there's a good opportunity that you won't have that much anxiety. If I do something wrong to someone, I think about it more than they do, probably. Especially if I know it's wrong. Now, there are times when we operate and we don't know what we're doing. Again, we don't know how we're offending those around us. That's why we need to have the self-awareness to always consider that those around us are telling us the truth about how they feel about the way that we're treating them, right? We have to trust them for that, because if not, you'll end up getting caught up in your own ways, in your own negativity, and you can begin to deteriorate or erode your self-love or erode your emotional intelligence. So it is a real thing to think positive. Make sure you just exercise your morals, whatever they may be. Again, we talked about some places. If you're a person that has never been taught morals, there are plenty of places for you to go. You come to No Self Hate. You could talk to your family. If you don't have a family, you could talk to your church. If you don't want to join a church, you can do research yourself. There are a lot of ways to identify different moral and ethical codes, or the ethical codes that exist within the United States or worldwide. Next up, spiritual and moral growth. So every ethical decision you make is a step toward becoming the best version of yourself. It deepens your awareness, strengthens your character, and helps you live with purpose. The final thought here is moral and ethical behavior isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing what's right even when it's hard. It brings peace to the soul, strength to relationships, and light to the world. And in a time where right and wrong are often blurred, choosing integrity is a bold and powerful act of self-love. Love thyself first. All right. Okay, so that was wonderful. And now that we've expanded our understanding of morals and ethics, we are now going to run through the rest of this information for right versus wrong. So let's go into what are the types of right versus wrong. So, type 1, moral and ethical right and wrong. We just talked about that. This is about what you feel is good or bad. Deep inside, it comes from your conscious, that little voice in your head that says that's not fair or that's the kind thing to do. Okay. An example, the right here is helping a classmate who dropped their books. The wrong here is taking credit for something someone else did. At a moral and ethical right level. How to know? Ask if you ever find yourself in a situation, in a moral or ethical situation. You want to say, if I were them, how would I feel? If I did this to them, how would it make me feel? Next up, legal right versus wrong. These are laws that tell us what's okay and not okay in our country or state. Break them and you could get in trouble with the police or the courts. So, an example of legal right versus wrong is buckling your seatbelt in the car. Wrong is driving through a red light, as there is a law that says you can't do that. You can open yourself up to fines or even worse, prison or something like that. So, how to know? So whenever you want to know if something is legally right or wrong, could I get a ticket or go to court for this? Is there a law that is covering this? We have to research this information before we start making decisions without, making decisions in the blind. If you need to know if something is legal, just put the work in, research it, and just make sure you're moving in the right. We don't want anyone to have to end up inadvertently in prison out of ignorance. Right. And I believe they say ignorance isn't an excuse. So we have to make sure that we're asserting this effort to know what is legally right versus what is legally wrong. Next up, social right versus wrong, polite versus rude. So these are manners that help everyone get along, things most people expect, even if they're not written down, unspoken rules, right? So an example is waiting for your turn in line. That's the right thing. The wrong thing is talking loudly while someone else is speaking. We want to exercise active listening, and sometimes you can get a little emotional and get a little heated, but you want to try to rein yourself in and be able to pull yourself back into a calm place where you're actively listening to the people around you. It shows enormous emotional intelligence, and it can lead to positive results. All right. So how to know whether something is socially right versus wrong? Would people smile or frown if I did this? Okay. You want to ask yourself these questions. You want to reflect before you do anything, before you make any decisions. Again, remember, we are not perfect. Majority of us, just about all of us, if we don't have all of the knowledge in the world, so we're operating out of some sense of ignorance. So keep that in mind, that just, even if you think you're right all the time, just keep it in your mind that you don't know everything. So it's a possibility that you could be wrong. So try to walk forward with that. Try to keep that present within yourself. Next up, religious or spiritual right versus wrong. So these are guidelines from your religion or spiritual beliefs about how to live a good life. An example is right, donating a portion of your allowance to help the poor because your faith teaches generosity. Wrong is cheating during a religious fast when you promise to follow. How would you know in this situation? Would my faith leader or holy book say this is loving and honest? Or would it say that it's something else? And this is really simple, a simple thing to do if you find yourself in situations where you struggle with making moral decisions or decisions that support the greater good, decisions that are based off a framework or code of ethics, a code of morality. Okay? You want to know, hey, if someone saw me doing this, or if they knew I did this, what would they think? How would they feel about it? And then go from there. If you think they would feel bad, don't do it. If you think they would judge you in a way that they're not used to seeing you, or they, didn't expect that from you, then don't do it. But if you think it's something that they would be proud of, something that you think they would be happy about, by all means. Okay? Again, this is just an opportunity. None of this is mandatory. None of this is, no one has to go out here and necessarily do these things. This is our self-empowerment journey. If it fits you, put the shoe on, wear it, and get what you can out of it. All right. Next up, smart versus not smart, good versus bad for your future. Okay. So choices that either help or hurt your health, safety, or goals, even if they're not illegal. So an example is wearing a helmet while skateboarding. That's the right thing to do. You don't want to harm yourself, where if you fall off a skateboard, you crack your head or something like that. You don't want to do that. And then wrong is staying up all night playing games before a big test. If you're a kid, you got your game in your room, you sneak in your room, you play a game, everybody think you're in your bed, and you got a test the next day, and you go there and you bomb the test. That is not smart. Smart versus not smart. Good versus bad. So the decisions that you make it's really about setting yourself up for success in the future. Okay, that's what they mean about smart versus not smart. Um, it could be, you know, your goals. Are you actively pursuing your goals? Are you putting the effort and the work into achieving your goals that you intend to? Does your intent align with your actions on your goals? If they don't, that's not smart. If they do, that is smart. Again, perfection is not the goal. Effort and excellence. Okay. So, how to know, will this choice make tomorrow easier or harder for me? If I make this decision, am I going to go to jail tomorrow? Or have to be worried about going to jail? If I make this decision, am I going to have to look over my shoulder every day? If I make this decision, am I going to be fired? If I make this decision, is someone going to be harmed? You must ask yourself that before you make your decisions. Again, the whole goal of this is to increase emotional intelligence. We must be able to pause and control ourselves. Who's controlling you? Are you controlling you? Or are your emotions controlling you? And emotions are impulses. You have to ask yourself these questions. If you're controlling you, set yourself up for success by asking, will this choice make tomorrow easier or harder for me? Okay. Next up, style and respect, right versus wrong, pretty versus messy. Actions that make places look nicer or worse. It's about respecting shared spaces. For example, planting flowers in a community garden. That's the right thing. The wrong thing is scribbling on a park bench with a permanent marker. You're destroying your own community. That's what's more this is about. This is about taking care of your community, taking care of your space, whether that's your office, your workspace, whether that's your neighborhood, whether that's your city, whatever you look at, right? But making sure that it looks good and make sure you're not contributing to the erosion of that beauty. How to know, am I leaving this place better or worse than I found it? Cleaning up after yourself, right? And then last but not least, right versus wrong beliefs. This is about believing in things that are true and not spreading things that are false or made up. An example of a right here is asking a teacher if you're not sure something is true. A wrong here is telling your friends something scary you heard online without checking if it's real, right? Not checking your sources. Some other examples here could be, excuse me, in spreading information about someone that you know isn't true, that you haven't validated or verified, would be a wrong thing, right? Going to that person, asking that person if that information is true about them in a respectable, honorable, emotionally intelligent way would be a right thing, in my opinion, in this situation. Okay, so next up, how to know. Can I prove this is true with facts or trusted people? If it's not true and you can't prove it, don't run around spreading it and different things like that, because lies can be told about people, perceptions can be molded, different things like that, and that could have negative effects on people. So just keep that in mind. Can I prove this is true with facts or trusted people? Beautiful. We got through there and great timing. So next up, what factors influence our understanding of right versus wrong? How did we get to the point where we have an understanding of right versus wrong? And we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. So we talked about family and upbringing. Our earlier experiences with caregivers shape our initial sense of morality. What's praised, what's punished, what's normalized. What are you shaping with your children if you have children? What was shaped for you in your life? How did your family and your upbringing mold your morality and your ethics, or right versus wrong? An example, a child raised in a household where kindness and honesty are rewarded may grow up valuing truth and empathy. If a child sees their parents lying or cheating regularly, they may internalize those behaviors as acceptable. We as parents have to watch what we're doing in front of our children. They are watching everything. I hope we are exercising the utmost integral behavior or upright behavior that we can in front of our children. I know we're not perfect. I know we're human. We're going through life just like them. And we still feel things, but do the best you can to ensure that, you are, teaching your child right from wrong. That is very important. It starts in the home. Before they get out here to the world, it starts at home. Make sure you're doing the best you can and identify even with yourself where, there are some opportunities for improvement that maybe your parents, there was a gap there for your parents where they didn't know something that you now know. Make sure you teach that with your children. Go through and see, check your moral compass, check your moral code. Where did you get this information from? Right? What did my family teach me about my moral code? Whether that's right or whether that's wrong, whether that's moral or immoral. Identify these things. Next up, religion and spiritual beliefs. Religious teachings often provide clear rules for right and wrong. For example, the Ten Commandments, karma in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Sharia law in Islam. Okay, so these are some of the things that molded how some of us think. For me, there has been different religious texts and rules that I've read over the years that I have modeled and built my morality on. Okay. An example, a Christian might believe it is wrong to steal because it's against biblical commandments. A Buddhist might refrain from harming animals because of beliefs in karma and compassion. All right, next up, educational and critical thinking. Schools, mentors, and books teach us how to think logically about fairness, justice, and ethics beyond personal beliefs. For example, a student learning about social inequities may begin to develop strong moral convictions around justice, fairness, and human rights. Courses in philosophy or ethics can challenge us to re-examine our beliefs, forcing us to wrestle with complex questions about capital punishment, systemic racism, or prison reform. So this is another way we can get this through education. The more knowledge we receive, the more, I told you about that earlier, how we learn something new, it can potentially render what we knew before that or thought about that one thing, is it can render it obsolete in the long term. All right, next up we have culture and society. So let's take a look at culture and society. All right, next up we have culture and society. So culture and society, which is basically one of the things that influences our understanding of right versus wrong. Norms vary across countries and communities. What is considered right in one culture may be wrong in another. In Western cultures, individual freedom is often prioritized. In some Eastern cultures, collective harmony might be more important, and speaking out may be discouraged. Eating beef is normal in many Western countries, but is taboo in Hindu communities. Next up, laws and legal systems influence our understanding of right and wrong. Laws represent society's agreed upon ethics and help set boundaries for right and wrong, though laws can be flawed or unjust. For example, there was a time when child labor was legal, young kids working long hours in dangerous factories. It followed the law, but it violated basic human dignity. That proves law and morality don't always align. So law and morality is not always going to be on the same page. Whereas when it comes to stealing, it's both illegal and considered morally wrong by most people. At that ethic or at that standard, we all can agree that stealing is wrong, right? So not all laws align with morals and ethics, but where they do, these are considered like our universal rights and wrongs, right? Universally, we can agree that stealing is a wrong thing across many people, many groups, many cultures, right? Next up, media and pop culture. TV, movies, music, books, and social media shape values by modeling behaviors, rewarding or punishing certain actions. Superhero movies often reinforce the idea of standing up for justice, even when it's hard. Reality shows or influencers that glorify greed or deception may desensitize viewers to unethical behavior, right? So what are you learning? What are you taking in? These things have an effect on you, whether you think you have control of them or not. If you're watching negativity all day and you go somewhere and you get into a negative argument with someone, I have to assume that what you consumed led you to that negative place, right? So we have to watch what we're consuming. We have to understand that media and pop culture is entertainment. There's a certain way you have to deal with entertainment. It is meant to entertain. It is not meant for you to mimic, copy, emulate, as far as, in my opinion, as far as the negative things. But if it's something telling you to go to college, if it's something that's showing you a certain way, if it's something that's helping you with trauma, if it's something that's beneficial to you, then by all means leverage that entertainment. But if it's something that is taken away from you, you may not want to follow, the different things, because they can be misleading you. People will do anything to get clout or recognition or be seen or get attention, and sometimes that could be a negative thing, right? Everyone loves attention. Everyone likes to be seen. Everyone wants to have fun, basically, but we just have to do it safely. Sometimes media and pop culture can lead us down roads that aren't necessarily beneficial for ourselves. All right, next up, psychological and emotional development. Cognitive growth, emotional intelligence, and brain development influence our ability to feel guilt, empathy, and understand consequences. Okay, for example, a child who learns how others feel when they're hurt may develop a strong sense of compassion. Someone with antisocial personality disorder may not feel guilt, affecting their understanding of wrong. So psychological and emotional development is very important when it comes to influencing our understanding of right and wrong. So I want you to think about that. If a person doesn't have the building blocks of a great foundational mental health plan or mental health state, they can, maybe confuse right with wrong or wrong with right sometimes, right? We want to verify. We want to identify the greater good or the right in the situation. And we have to do research for that. We have to learn things. We have to find knowledge. Again, there are people out here that have never been taught this information. They've never heard of it before in their lives. So again, it poses that question of, how do you know something that you don't know exists? How do you find out something that you need to find out, but you don't know to look for it, right? We have to stay active. We have to seek knowledge. We have to make sure we're identifying all of this information that affects us in our well-being. All right. Next up, trauma and life experience. Painful or formative events can reshape how we judge right and wrong, especially when tied to survival, betrayal, or injustice. So, for example, a survivor of abuse might struggle with trust or moral gray areas, especially around forgiveness. Someone who grew up in poverty may justify stealing to survive, even if they know it's wrong. Now, there we go. Two things here. So, painful and formative events can reshape how we judge right or wrong. I saw that a few years ago. I knew someone that lost somebody violently, and that person wanted to get revenge, and that person wanted to throw their morals away, wanted to throw away ethics. They wanted to just feel the feeling of revenge, because they felt what was done was unjust to the person. And they were pretty moral in my book, but they just ran into some pain that compromised their ability to judge what was right and wrong. Okay. So yeah, that is real. And the second thing here is the stealing to survive. That's always been a conversation. I remember that in school, where should a person steal to survive? even if their life depended on it. Even if they had to steal something to make sure that they eat, should they do that thing? That's a tough one, right? Because if you're hungry and you have no way to get food, what do? Well, for me, I am going to exhaust all of my options. I am going to entertain. I am going to try to work. I am going to wash windows. And this is easier said than done because that's assuming someone has good health to be able to work or entertain, right? So, this is just a tough question. Stealing to survive. I just feel like you have to exhaust as many options as you can for earning or having someone give you that thing versus stealing. I would rather you ask someone for it, right? You ask 10 people, at least 2 people are going to help out. It's just my belief. I was taught that in sales years ago, that out of every 10 people, 2 people will buy something for you or buy something for you. So just keep that in mind. But trauma and life experience can mold or influence our understanding of right versus wrong. Next up, peer pressure and social influence. The people around us, friends, co-workers, online communities, can sway our sense of right and wrong through influence, fear, or belonging. For example, a teenager might join in bullying to fit in, even if they know it's wrong. A whistleblower might stay silent about fraud in their company due to fear of retaliation. So peer pressure and social influence. I went through something like this not too long ago where someone had a certain level of social influence and they leveraged that to create negativity or misery for me, whether that's purposefully or inadvertently, but it did create that for me. And I was in a position of what is right versus wrong here when it comes to my response. So I've thought of a lot of things, and I just didn't feel good doing some of those things because my moral upbringing didn't teach me to react these ways. But I was really upset about what happened. So ultimately, I chose to do nothing. I chose to do unconditional forgiveness. I chose to automate forgiveness. Whether that person know they did it or whether they have the moral compass to come apologize for it or try to make it right, I can't leave that in their hands. I must take control of my happiness. And it was making me unhappy to have to walk around with that misery and that anger for what that person did to me. So I unconditionally forgave them with boundaries, right? And I've moved on. So just keep that in mind. You definitely want to leverage some of your forgiveness IQ stuff that we went over. All of this stuff is all coming into play when you're determining right and wrong, all of these things. And this is us aligning ourselves with some information that we all can say we learned together. And that if we chose to, we could say that some of this stuff, we have the same ideas of right versus wrong. So we have calibrated ourselves as far as our morality to a certain extent. Now, obviously, we still have our religion, whatever else, ethics, codes, family upbringing, culture. We still have those things at play. But just from today's episode, we've had the opportunity to say, okay, this thing is considered right or could be considered right, and this thing could be considered wrong together, even though we're all from different places, different parts of the world. All right, so next up, this is our last one. So personal reflection and conscious. Over time, introspection, guilt, and self-awareness help refine one's moral compass beyond external rules. An example, a person may feel guilty for cheating on taxes even if they don't get caught and resolve to never do it again. Someone might leave a high-paying but ethical job after realizing it goes against their personal values, right? So that's personal reflection and conscious. You know, how we feel. How does our conscience feel about this right or this wrong? In the second example, it says someone might leave a high-paying but unethical job after realizing it goes against their personal values. And that's a real thing. That person really believes and stands on their values. Their values were taught to them and they held on to them for as long as they could. And there's still in no money, there's no amount of cash that can make you, sacrifice your values or morals, depending on who you are. Some people it can. Some, people in our society will compromise their integrity and their values to make some money. And it's a real thing. All right. That is it for today. But before we get out of here, let's go over our self-reflection questions. Right versus wrong self-reflection. So first one, we must ask ourselves, I want you to ask yourself, how do I know the difference between what feels right and what is right? Remember we talked about sometimes we feel right, but we may not necessarily be operating in the right. Our emotions may make us feel that way, but we may not be that way. And we'll go deeper into this information on part 2 or 3, where we go into what is right. And we'll do a deep dive into what is right. Next up, am I choosing what's right or what's easy, popular, or beneficial to me? All right, true morality often demands sacrifice. Right choices might cost you comfort, relationships, or status, but they protect your character and others. I feel great. I've made some decisions where I had to stand, on all 10, and I'm happy for it. Ultimately, I maintained me, and there's nothing like that because I have to live with me every day. All right. Next up, have I ever convinced myself something was right because I didn't want to face guilt? So self-deception is a defense mechanism, but pretending something isn't wrong doesn't erase the damage it causes or the responsibility we carry. So self-deception is a defense mechanism. A lot of us are operating and we're deceiving ourselves. We're convincing ourselves that when something is clearly wrong, that it is right. For whatever reasons. We're lying to ourselves. Remember, align yourself with your morals. Apply that across all of your topics, all of your subjects, all of your everything that you go through. Try to align your morals with that. Okay? Well, there's an opportunity for you to do that. Next up, do I apply the same standard of right and wrong to myself that I apply to others? So hypocrisy creates confusion and moral erosion. Real integrity means holding yourself accountable to the values you expect from others. Hold yourself accountable. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. It's easier said than done, but we have to find ways to do it. So do you apply the same standard of right and wrong to you that you apply to others? Next up, what role does my culture, religion, and upbringing play in how I define right and wrong? So some beliefs are inherited, not examined. Think about that. Some of these things that we believe in, we're just operating on. We never combed through and audited these beliefs. Maybe it's time we do a belief audit. Maybe it's time we do a morality audit. It's essential to question, is this truly moral or just traditional? Morality should be rooted in empathy and in justice, not just repetition, not just because you were taught it. Okay? Have I ever remained silent about something wrong because I feared consequences? Silence in the face of wrongdoing often protects the problem. Moral courage means using your voice even when it shakes to stand for what's right. I went through that, like I said, and that was an amazing observation where I saw a group of humans witnessing something that was horribly wrong, and they did absolutely nothing. Now, prior to that, these people presented themselves as high moral beings. But in that situation, I guess you just never know until people get in those situations. But I just saw it and no one said a word. And I was shocked that, well, you know what? I wasn't shocked. Because some people put self-preservation over morality. Some people will keep their mouths closed if it means that they're going to be able to pay their bills. They're going to be able to do this or do that. They won't say a word, right? But not me. When I see something wrong, whether that's in my home, my workplace, life at the gym, I normally if it's horrible, I normally don't like it happening around me. So I may say something, or try to find a solution, because who am I? I'm no one's, parent or anything like that. Well, none. I have my children. I'm their parents, but you get what I'm saying. So I can't assert false authority over people whenever I witness a wrongdoing, but I can express how I feel about it, and that's what I do. So, always have the courage to just think about how strong you have to be able to see something wrong. Let's say, for instance, you saw your boss doing something wrong to an employee. Now, you need your job, you got your mortgage, you got your house, you got your kids, your life going well, everything is going good, but you saw something wrong happening. Would you say something? Or would you just keep your mouth closed and come to work every day and act like you're somewhat moral? Right? Some people would, say something, and some would say nothing and just watch it. And that's what I witnessed. It was so bad. It was so bad. And, you know, they were fearful of retaliation. They were fearful of what might happen to them if they were to speak up about the wrong that they witnessed. So, in my book, they were complicit with it. They were a part of it, and that's just how I look at it. If you're not complicit with something, we'll say something. All right. Then last but not least, what kind of world would exist if everyone chose what I chose when faced with a moral decision? This powerful question reframes morality as a ripple effect. Would your actions build a world of justice, trust, and compassion, or one of chaos and harm? All right. Visit No Self Hate to shop mental health awareness apparel and accessories. Sign up for an account to access exclusive resources, empowering content, and upcoming member-only perks. Join the movement because healing starts with self-love. No self-hate. All right, everyone. I hope you learned something about yourself today. I hope you feel more optimistic about whatever it is you are going through. I hope you were able to learn some things about right versus wrong. Within yourself. I hope if you didn't have a moral compass, this was an opportunity for someone that may have not had a moral compass to find ways to develop that moral compass. But this is very important information because I see this in the world every day, and we are struggling with right versus wrong. If you don't believe me, watch the news tonight, and you'll see it right there. So, as we continue to accelerate the evolution of human emotional intelligence, I am signing off for now. And yeah, I'll be back with What is Right. I think that's part 2 of 5, where we do a deep dive into what is right. What does it mean to be right? How do we constantly harness righteousness is what I want to ask. So we'll answer that in our next episode, part 2 of 5. Thank you for your time and your energy. Be blessed. Be well.